Ladies and gentlemen, Lenin, V. Lenin, you all know who Lenin is, don't you? Said this, quote, "Democracy is indispensable to socialism," end quote. Now, why is that, do you think? Well, it's simply this, ladies and gentlemen. They're calling the United States a democracy now. It is not, never has been. It is a constitutional republic. A constitutional republic is where there is a balance of power. In the federal government, that balance consists of the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. In the election process, where we elect our representatives to go and take care of business for the state in Washington, D.C., we elect representatives. Our founders set this government up so that senators were picked by the state, not elected by the people. This would make sure that our constitutional republic could not become a democracy and thus turn into an oppressive, dictatorial, socialist state. For they understood the process well. The first step into turning the United States into a democracy was taking the power of the state to choose its own senators away and put it in the hands of the electorate, or the people. Whenever the people see that they can vote themselves whatever exists in the treasury, socialism quickly follows. For when the people find out that they can vote themselves whatever they want, and that's what's happening in the country today, people are voting themselves whatever they want, Congress is voting themselves whatever they want, everybody is moving this country more and more into socialism. With socialism eventually comes a dictatorship. With a dictatorship always comes fascism in its various forms, or total and absolute control and ownership by the state of everybody and everything, and that is known as communism. Freedom disappears, ladies and gentlemen, when people become dependent upon the state, or upon a dictator, or upon a king, or a lord, or an emperor, or a baron, or a duke or duchess, for their very existence, for their job, for their clothing, for their food. When this happens, people, without even realizing it, have become enslaved. In the pursuit of laziness and in the pursuit of the dole, getting something for nothing, which, folks, is a dream that never, never comes true. There is no such thing as something for nothing. When you accept a benefit from a benefactor, you give away some of your rights, for the benefactor has a right to dictate the manner in which you use the benefit. When you become a child to a father or a mother, the father and the mother have the right to dictate what time the child gets up, what the child has to eat, what kind of work the child does, if the child goes to school or if the child does not, what time the child has to be in bed, whether the child can go out, whether the child can drive a car, whether the child can have a bicycle, whether the child gets any gifts at Christmas time or any other time of the year for that matter. And when people become dependent upon the state, they become the child and the state becomes the father. And you had better understand that. That is why Lenin understood, and our founding fathers understood, that democracy is indispensable to socialism. Did you ever wonder why the United Nations military is called peacekeepers? Because Karl Marx said this. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. I quote, "Peace is the absence of all opposition to socialism," end quote. Let me say that one more time. Karl Marx, quote, "Peace is the absence of all opposition to socialism," end quote. Did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that Karl Marx was a bitter failure at absolutely everything that he ever tried? Have you ever really studied his life? Probably not. He was a bitter, absolute failure at every single thing he ever tried. Did you know that Karl Marx was a racist who hated Jews, blacks, and the common man? In particular, Slavs? That's right, let me say it again. Karl Marx was a racist. He hated Jews, he hated blacks, and he hated the common man. Your Marxist professor in college didn't tell you that, did he? Did you know that Karl Marx was nothing more or less than a stooge for a wealthy capitalist named Friedrich Engels? Did you know that socialism was created by the rich as the ultimate method of enslaving and controlling the masses by making them totally and completely dependent upon the state? If not, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you not to read college textbooks about socialism, but read the actual dialogues between Marx and Engels. You see, they were prolific writers. They wrote letters to each other and to other people their entire lives. Forget the textbooks. They're lying to you. Always, if you want to know the truth, go to the source. That's why I get so angry when somebody calls me to find out what their congressman is doing in Washington. Read the dialogues between Marx and Engels, and you will find it all laid out clearly for anyone to see. Even the sheeple will understand it. Of course, it's dry reading, and it takes a lot of time, and it's boring to wade through all of that crap, because that's what most of it is, absolute, total crap. But if you want to find the truth, you've got to do that. Those who have been teaching you the lie about socialism know that you won't, in most cases, ever even attempt it. Of course, before you start, I must tell you that you must have a brain and some rudimentary intelligence, something that most socialists apparently lack. You see, modern-day socialists have perfected propaganda techniques to the point that the biggest lies are now regarded by the sheeple as absolute truth. For reference, read the ravings, and I mean ravings, of Chip Burlett, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Anti-Defamation League, Hillary Clinton, the first androgynous president ever, and other socialist organizations and socialists' writings and speeches, who were at work destroying this nation, the greatest nation that ever existed in the history of the world, the only nation that ever existed that ever set men and women free in their own right. For you see, freedom has never existed anywhere else in the world, even unto this day, except in this country. For instance, let me take one little common big lie that the socialists have foisted upon the American people, and they have swallowed hook, line, and sinker. You see, the concept of right versus left. With the socialist given that the left extreme is communism, which is good somehow, left liberal, communism, socialism is good, and the right extreme is Nazi, bad. This has happened through repeated connection of Nazi with right, and not any basis in fact whatsoever. It is a deception of the greatest magnitude, for Nazi is not right, never was right, and can never be right, pun absolutely intended. You see, ladies and gentlemen, any scale must measure two extremes, or it's not a scale. In effect, heavy versus light, white versus black, light versus darkness, fat versus thin, and etc. You see, the concept that a scale measuring left versus right has at its two extremes elements of total control and oppression is absolutely ludicrous, and is one of the biggest lies that has ever been foisted upon this world. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, the truth is that the scale measures at the extreme left the total control and ownership of everything and everyone by the state. This is called communism. Versus, at the right extreme, the absence of any control of anything or anyone by anybody, which is called anarchy. Between these two extremes are all the other forms of government and or control or absence of control. Somewhere near the middle is our constitutional republic. Didn't you ever wonder, ladies and gentlemen, how the socialist big lie made anarchists absolutely disappear from the equation? On the left was total control of communism. On the right was the total control of fascism under Nazis. What was anarchy supposed to be in the middle? Where our constitutional republic actually sits? Didn't you ever wonder about that? Or do you ever wonder about anything anymore? Have you been so conditioned, so